Are we on? I think we are on. GM,
We're on.
glorious morning chop.
Glorious morning, Pepito. How you doing, my friend?
I am doing good. Doing good. Good gym session this morning. Logged in onto LinkedIn and got absolutely roasted. So that was pretty funny.
I saw that. It's quite the LinkedIn post you got going on there.
Yeah, I have a few notifications, click on the notification page and see this post, and I'm like, this must be super old. Because I mean, this is 5 years ago. And I click on it and I'm like, oh no, it's like 12 minutes ago. Guy just absolutely roasted me. I don't know what he did to my face on this photo. I look like almost I have a unibrow, did something to my teeth. Really concerned. I might report.
Yeah.
Blasphemy. I cannot take this. This level of bullying. I've been bullied before. People will recognize themselves, but this is just someone out of nowhere. So I'm having a great day overall. Big week.
Off the cuff, it's just easing you into the week with some casual bullying and LinkedIn lunatic slander. I love it. I've been seeing your
How
gym
about
posts.
you?
They've been driving me. I've been doing well. I've been deadlifting and getting back into the kettlebells over the past week because I spent a while doing nothing after getting back from Porto and drinking lots. But it's time to get active, get back in the dojo and start moving again.
Back in the dojo.
Doing mostly this week. I appreciate your tweets. It's good motivation. The motivation I need to keep going.
I don't do as much views and like as other influencers are posting. Maybe I should start posting feed pics, but I don't know. Maybe it doesn't work. No, but back yet with another Beyond the Price, number 13. I don't know if you're, how do you say? If you like the number 13 or not. I kind of like it.
If I'm not superstitious, no, 13's a good
Okay.
number. I think it's nice.
Cool.
I wonder if Michael's superstitious.
We'll see. Well, I guess first question out of the bat. But no, I guess we'll still be talking Solana today. I guess the resurgence, I don't know if we can call about this, but been pretty hot so far. So it's a great time to talk about Sol strategies. And let me add Michael to the chat. Glomo, Michael.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Well,
very, very well.
Thanks so much for having me on.
No, pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Glomo.
Can you kick us off, Michael, by just giving us a short introduction to yourself and maybe telling us a little bit about what Sol Strategies is and what you do?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Sol Strategies, but my background on Solana goes back to 2021, where I started the Lane Validator and later also built StakeWiz and ran those for several years, being part of the validator community and broader ecosystem. Help organize Block Zero, which is a validator summit that we run every year with Breakpoint, happening again this year in Abu Dhabi. And I joined Sol Strategies earlier this year in March. So been there ever since and helping them drive forward this vision where we are trying to build a company that is representative of the whole of the Solana ecosystem. So we run several proprietary validators in-house. So we have about 3.7 million SOL delegated to our validators. And we have a SOL treasury, 400 and something thousand SOL as well. And we're really trying to focus on building a sustainable infrastructure business, supporting the ecosystem, contributing to the core tech, and seeing where we think Solana is going to be the dominant blockchain in the future. We think that this is where internet capital markets and online commerce is going to congregate, and we're looking at this with a multi-year vision. And in that context, we're kind of focused on how do we build the best, strongest, and most valuable business in the long term to contribute to that.
Very cool. And I mean, I guess you're Solana pilled. What brought you to this ecosystem in particular, and maybe how did you make your way to crypto? A bit of the micro lore.
Yeah, so I've got a background as a software developer, like I think so many of us here, right? I first heard about Bitcoin back in like 2013. I think like a lot of people, I've got one of those stories where I bought some Bitcoin in 2013, had it for like a day or two, and then oh, this is probably not going to go anywhere, and sold it, and will regret that for the rest of my life. And I never got deep into it back then. But I got into Bitcoin mining in 2017, 2016, I think. Got the machines from China and set them up back in a warehouse. Not a lot, like 3 or 4. And like was getting really into it and had big plans to expand it. And then Bitcoin was like 20,000 all-time high, and then crashed and just like catastrophe, and it like broke my spirit, and I just like walked away from crypto for many years. After that, I think 2018 to 2021, I just like didn't touch it. I was just focused on kind of TradFi, building web apps, that kind of stuff. So not TradFi, Web2. And then 2021, I started getting back into the space, and I was, on crypto Twitter and reading about all these new blockchains that have come around that didn't exist when I was last in the space. I'd always had an interest in kind of fast and cheap blockchains. So back in 2018, that used to be Dash. I don't know if anyone's even heard of Dash anymore. But, when Bitcoin was really slow and expensive, and Ethereum has kind of always sucked, to be honest, I've never really understood the appeal. And then 2021 comes around, long story short, I'm like learning about all the new blockchains that have come around since I was last in the space. And I came across Solana, and I joined the Discord. And having always had an interest in kind of the infrastructure side, I was looking at kind of the validator space. And honestly, it's just the most amazing community. Seeing the way that the core engineers on Solana, which back then was on Solana Labs, now Anza, the way they were interacting with the validator community, and people were working together to debug, and they had the Tour de Sol program back then to incentivize testnet validators. All of that, like the vibes were just incredible. And I just like fell in love. And this was like in March 2021. And by April 2021, I was running a testnet validator. And then in August, I came on mainnet.
That's a pretty quick timeline, Michael. What were you doing in real life as that was happening? Were you working? Did you have full-time employment in Web3, or just you be curious about it? How was your IRL life shaping up to make that happen?
So the lore of the name Lane, if we look at the name of the validator, right? That was the name of my Web2 company. So I'm from South Africa, and I had a company building websites and web apps and stuff like that. And that company is called Lane. So that's where it all came from, really. So that's what I was doing at the time. So nothing really in the Web3 space at all.
Very cool. What attracted you to the Web3 space broadly beyond just Bitcoin and price go up? Is there a deeper connection there for you?
Well, I think I really connect with the idea of, sovereignty, or like owning your own money, your wealth. Not like I still get nervous about kind of having too much money in like a bank or in like a stock brokerage. Like, what if they go belly up? And coming from South Africa, which is a developing nation, we see, I think, people in the US sometimes struggle to understand how cross-border the economies of other countries tend to be. So we often have to buy stuff from other countries. We deal with businesses in other countries. So we're constantly transferring money between borders, between banking systems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's slow, it's arduous, it's expensive. So that's like immediately obvious use case for Bitcoin to begin with, and then obviously for more efficient blockchains beyond that. So the combination of that and just the fact that you can really own your bag, those are like the big drivers for me.
Nice. Does South Africa do a lot of remittance payments and that kind of thing? Because I know that's a big crypto use case for a lot of Southeast Asian countries, using it for remittance payments and just getting totally fleeced by the current sort of service providers that exist at the moment in terms of fees and everything.
Yeah, not as much. So South Africa is kind of like a pretty good economy as far as the developing nation goes. We have a lot of exports and a very big service industry. So, even when I was doing kind of Web2 software, I would often work with international clients. And so I think a big use case in South Africa is B2B payments, cross-border B2B payments, and especially like export import. When we buy something, like we don't have, now we do, but until 2 years ago, we didn't have Amazon. So a lot of our online shopping, we'd order from the US, and it would take weeks to arrive, and payments were difficult, and then there'd be like customs charges. And like that's a problem that's still not solved. But the essence being like we'd often buy stuff from outside the country.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. It's cool that that's kind of what attracted you to Solana, that the openness of the ecosystem and how it all functions. What has Sol Strategy's approach to the market been over the past 12 to 18 months?
So Sol Strategies, has only existed in that form since September last year, when the company renamed itself to this. Prior to that, it was Cypherpunk Holdings. So still very much a Web3 company and public in the Canadian market since 2018, focused on kind of cypherpunk mentality, privacy tech, Bitcoin heavily. And then last year, the company basically went full in on Solana. So the mindset really has been that Solana is going to be the winning blockchain, the dominant blockchain of the future that is going to drive global commerce, and high performance, low cost, global synchronization of state is going to be the winning kind of method of blockchains, as opposed to highly fractional ecosystems of L2s. So our approach is essentially we want to drive the growth of the Solana ecosystem, and we want to provide our shareholders exposure to that ecosystem, not just, but also to the underlying asset, SOL, the token, but also to the broader ecosystem, because SOL on its own doesn't fully represent the entire ecosystem, which consists of all of DeFi, stable coins, payment mechanisms, and all of the infrastructure layer, RWAs, amazing projects like Helium and Hive Mapper. And an area that we're really focusing on at the moment is how do we bring stocks on chain. We are a public company that represents the Solana ecosystem. You should be able to trade our stock on Solana. So that's really the areas where we think we can bring value and also provide that value to our shareholders.
How are you going about doing that, Michael? In terms of stocks in particular, like that's been a pretty big story for Solana over the past 2-ish weeks, having X stocks now available on chain. So what goes into the process of making something like that happen?
It's so complicated, honestly. So for me, I've been with Sol Strategy since March, and a public company is such a different beast from a private company because there are so many rules and regulations that we have to follow to ensure that we provide investors a good deal, a fair deal, and that all investors have equal opportunity. And because we are public, we are regulated, and our regulator is the Ontario Securities Commission in Canada. We are listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Soon we will be listed on the NASDAQ as well, we hope. That's what we are working towards. And the difficulty of then going and saying, okay, we are already a regulated public company with listed shares, and we now want to take those shares and put them onto the blockchain, is interesting. And we're engaging with regulators both in Canada and in the US to understand what are the rules, what are the current frameworks, are they compatible, and how can we provide the regulators with the information and the data that they need to be comfortable with it. At the same time, on a technical level, we are working with a company called Superstate. So Superstate's a really great company. They are working together with the Solana Foundation to make tokenized stocks happen. And what we're really excited about is the solution that we're working on. It's difficult, but when we pull it off, it'll allow genuine stocks to trade directly on chain. And as a user, as an investor, you can buy a share of Sol Strategies, hypothetically, on the NASDAQ today, and tomorrow you can sell it on Jupiter. That same share. You don't have to have a wrapper. It's not completely like independent synthetic products. And the big value proposition here, when we talk about internet capital markets, what do we really mean by that? What we mean is not just the ability for users to get price exposure, to bet this stock is going to go up or down, but for issuers, companies like Sol Strategies or any other company that wishes to tokenize their stock, to access the capital that exists on chain, being able to do an IPO on the blockchain instead of going to traditional NASDAQ and paying investment bankers, and so much money gets lost in the friction of the traditional finance system. So, I think that's going in line with all the previous conversation we had about kind of payments and what attracted me to the blockchain. I think tokenized stocks is going to unlock all of those values for companies and capital formation, where anyone can get access to exciting new companies that are launching, and companies can access so much capital that they otherwise can't tap into.
So about this, what are your early thoughts? Because we've seen on Solana the X stocks, which, I mean, I have a broad understanding of how it works, and Robinhood with its, I guess, also tokenized stocks on its platform. What are your thoughts on those two? I guess first of very public tests, I guess, still call it that. And what's I guess you're working on the next step where it's actual your tokenized stocks being available on chain.
I think they're really great use cases, and they're all a bit different, and they meet slightly different requirements. So X stocks, and I'm not as familiar with Robinhood's product, but with X stocks, for example, the big unlock is you require KYC if you want to mint the token, the stock token. But once it's in existence, anyone can trade it freely, right? So that reduces a lot of friction, and you can go and trade it very easily, which is great. I love that. What concerns me with a product like that is that I'm not sure how the underlying issuer, so issuer means the company whose shares it is, right? How do they benefit from that? How do you connect that market that exists? Like Tesla, you can trade it on Jupiter, right? But how can Tesla now say we want to raise $100 million to build a new factory for our cars, and we want to raise the money on Solana? And so that connection is still missing, and that's what we're working on. So I think that's really an important piece, and it's easy to overlook because for a lot of individual users, the price exposure is what's really exciting, and I completely understand that. And I think it's important to have those products available that offer that. But I think what's really going to trigger a wave of reform and growth in the RWA space, in the capital markets space, is when we start seeing meaningful capital formation that companies can tap into. And then we're going to see a flood of kind of new products and activity around that.
So what is Sol Strategies doing to enable that? You said that's something that you're working on quite deeply. You might not be able to talk about specifics, obviously, with specific projects or anything, but how do you see that evolving over the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, so specifically, we're exploring the ability to create a tokenized version of our stock. So that's what we're working on with Superstate, and that is ongoing behind the scenes. So as I mentioned, we're working with the regulators to get the clarity on how this all has to work together, and how, because we're tokenizing our actual real stocks, right? So we have to have the mechanisms for our existing shareholders, if they wish, they can opt in and they can transfer their shares onto the blockchain. And people who buy our shares on the blockchain will have the ability to transfer their shares off the blockchain and onto the NASDAQ or the CSE. So what we're currently working on is all of these mechanics, and we hope to be able to move forward with that very soon. But yeah, some might say it's a bit of a dry topic, but there's a lot behind the scenes that's going into that. And the goal there is that, so just to expand, the goal there is that our stock will be available on chain, and the key there is it's available in the US. It's available to anyone in the US who just completes a very basic KYC. So you don't have to be accredited, you don't have to be a qualified purchaser. There are no restrictions on how much net worth you have to have or anything like that. But also, it'll be available globally. And that's something that also excites me, where you can be in Singapore or Shanghai or Sao Paulo, and you can now access the United States capital market, the market that has by far the greatest amount of capital formation and liquidity and opportunity. And what I would love to see is one day where, as a company that is focused on the Solana ecosystem, a company that is building infrastructure, that is operating validators, that is earning income in Sol, one day that we can have thousands of shareholders on the blockchain from all around the world that have just one of our shares in their wallet, in Phantom, in Solflare, or anywhere else.
Do you see yourselves as being the ones to kind of open the floodgates to everybody else being able to do something similar? As far as I'm aware, nobody else has been able to tokenize their stock and put it on chain, as well as have it listed on the NASDAQ and elsewhere.
We're certainly trying to be part of that first wave. I know that there are other companies working towards it, so I would be hesitant to try and take all the credit. And I have to give credit to Superstate, who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They are the ones who are building the token mechanics, and that's an important piece, right? Like, how does the actual token work? So they're building the smart contracts that enable all the controls, where we can genuinely say this token is a security, and that's fine. It's SEC accepted, approved, registered. We're a registered SEC issuer, and they deserve a lot of credit for the work that they're doing. And I think with us and hopefully a couple other issuers that will be in that first wave, it will set a precedent where others will become comfortable with this primitive and be doing it as well.
That's really interesting. Thanks for the insights, Michael.
Because and I guess you kind of answered, but does this, or you guys making this happen, kind of, or is the hope to kind of create that blueprint to say, okay, it's going to be super easy for now the big ones, let's say, to say, hey, we want to actually tokenize our stock. We don't have any wrappers or stuff like that. That's kind of weird, and have this blueprint that you guys kind of worked towards with Superstate.
Yeah. There's a few different things that are also unknown. So the one is, once we do it and a few other companies are doing it, it sets the precedent, and people can see, okay, this is how the SEC treats it. There's going to be very clear guidance from the SEC on how it would treat this kind of tokenization framework. And then others will be able to say, okay, well, now we know it works, so we can do it. The other is that with any space, when a new primitive comes along, we're going to see, and I think hackathons play a big role in this. We're going to see new products, new DeFi protocols that are going to be built to provide value on top of it. So I don't know what in 12 or 18 months, what amazing products or protocols people are going to build to tap into the value of tokenized stocks, but I'm sure that there are going to be some crazy new products that are going to come from that. And that really excites me as well.
Is there anything in particular that you're paying attention to in crypto now outside of RWAs that's exciting you a lot? from a Sol Strategies standpoint? Obviously, RWAs is a big focus, not just for the industry as a whole, but for Sol Strategies. But is there anything else on the horizon that is exciting you?
I think there's two things. The first being kind of just general institutional interest and adoption. I think we're still very early on crypto Twitter, right? It's very much an echo chamber. So, we see that, okay, Solana is stable, Solana is growing, it's big, it's over 100 billion market cap now. But a lot of the world still doesn't know about it or doesn't feel comfortable putting their money into this ecosystem. And we're seeing a rapid change in that kind of behavior. I think in the last 6 months, we have seen a massive growth in comfort by institutions in the Solana ecosystem. And that pace of kind of warming up is just accelerating. So definitely growth of institutions in the space. I think we're going to see more ETFs coming along. And hopefully some of them will be really cool, really good ones. Some ETFs tend to be not that great because they have high expense ratios, or maybe they don't have staking. So I think, when we see some really cool low expense ratio ETFs or some innovative ETF structures, that could be really cool for the TradFi capital to kind of flow in. The second thing I think that's very exciting, or maybe exciting is not the right word, but I think very interesting, is the evolution of core engineering. Actually, I would say it's exciting. So we've seen today, in fact, the block size on Solana has increased. So Solana blocks are measured in compute units, and they've just gone from 50 million to 60 million compute units, just like that, with a feature flag when the epoch changed. And we are seeing a continuous growth and acceleration of the engineering at the core. I think FireDancer is getting closer and closer to being fully complete. We run FireDancer on 2 of our validators, and it's performing very well.
Sorry, Michael, did you say 15, 1-5, or 50, 50?
50, it's increased from 50, 50 to 60.
Okay, so yeah, sorry. I thought I heard 15. I was going to say a 4x improvement in block size is incredible.
No, it was 48 for a long time, and then it was increased from 48 to 50 as kind of a test about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And now to 60. The goal eventually is to go to like 100, which means...
Why is that significant for the people who don't know?
Practically, it means you can fit more transactions into a block, so bigger blocks.
Okay.
And bigger blocks means more TPS.
Right. Do we know, like, on a relative basis, how much that increases TPS by?
Well, I mean, the best way to measure it, I guess, would be just from 50 to 60 is, what's that, 20% increase?
Roughly speaking.
The big thing is you can't rush it because we don't know how close to the limit some validators might be. So if you increase it too much and half the validators suddenly can't keep up with the network crashes. So that's why it's this gradual. But it's the first time that we are now seeing this growth, this push to accelerate. And at the same time, slot times are getting faster. I don't know if most people pay attention. Epochs on Solana are designed to be 2 days long. A year ago, they were on average about 2.5 days, even 3 days sometimes. Right now, they're under 2 days. So the network is actually outperforming from its designed speed.
Does that have an effect on TPS as well? Is that part of that equation?
In a way, because normally you have 2.5 blocks per second, 1 block every 400 milliseconds. Right now, we're averaging 1 block every 350 milliseconds sometimes. So then you're getting basically 2.7 blocks per second, which means more transactions per second, so more TPS.
Yeah. How much of your job is staying close to this stuff and keeping up with it? I imagine that's a big part of what you have to do with Sol Strategies, right? I understand that and how it's going to affect the ecosystem and what's on the horizon.
Yeah, for me personally, I try to stay very close to these areas. We have a great engineering team, which is led by our CTO, Max Kaplan. So we have a really great team of engineers right now that are distributed all over the world, which is great. So we have constant engineering, and they're kind of trying to push forward validator engineering. We recently open sourced one of our tools that we use there. And then for me, I'm trying to kind of stay close to the kind of broader ecosystem DeFi space. And then of course we have other people, especially Leah and the rest of the team, that are focusing on the institutional side and kind of TradFi markets. And as a company, we try to kind of interconnect all of these.
Because this week we saw, I guess you guys worked with Jito as well on the BAM, the market, the block assembly marketplace. And it feels like, Solana devs and teams are really working hard to, I guess, improve and make the network faster, more secure, and so on. Are there any other, kind of flagship developments that maybe, I'm not aware or we're not aware of as pure users of the blockchain that you're, looking forward to?
So the really big one, and it's like, if you dive into it, it's super technical, but it's called Alpenglow. And basically, it's a complete reworking and change of the consensus algorithm. And it's going to drastically reduce the voting fees for validators, but it's also going to unlock concurrent block producers. So right now, one validator produces a block at a time. In the future, we want to get to a place where 2 validators produce a block at the same time, which means double the capacity, or even 3 or 4. And then eventually those blocks kind of get merged together downstream. So this is a massive upgrade, and the background is really cool and speaks to the kind of mindset behind Solana, where these researchers basically said that Solana sucks and the consensus algorithm right now is really bad. And then the Solana Foundation basically said, okay, well, if you can do it better, come and do it, and gave them all the kind of tools they needed. And now they've come and completely redesigned the consensus algorithm together with Anza, together with Solana Foundation. And this has been in the works for several months. It was announced at Accelerate in New York. And on a protocol level, this is going to be the biggest kind of unlock in the next 12 months.
How are you accessing all of this information, Michael? If somebody's listening in to this and being like, damn, I really want to get across all of this stuff as much as Michael is, or maybe on par with you, or slightly less potentially, because it's not their full-time job. But where do you go to get all this information, and how do you go about digesting it all? Because it's all reasonably technical, and it would take quite a bit to understand it and to process it all as well.
Yeah, it is a lot, and sometimes I kind of think of myself as like a raccoon of like going around all the different places trying to find information. There's so many kind of, I don't even get half of it. So there's so much that I'm missing. But the long and the short of it is Discord, sadly, shockingly, whatever, interestingly, is a really great source of information. Solana engineers, Anza core engineers, are building in the open. So on the Solana Tech Discord, there are like 25 core engineering channels that the average user cannot write in. But you can read and you can see what everyone is talking about, like all the nitty-gritty little details, the tiny little bug in this pull request, like everything. GitHub is like, one step closer to the source of truth. And then conferences, Accelerate, Breakpoint, the technical talks are amazing. I also attend some of the core engineering meetups, which are not open to the public. And then crypto Twitter and just talking to people.
If you had to rank them, what would you say is the most helpful? And maybe not to you, what would you say would be the most helpful to somebody tuning in, to the layman, if they want to stay up to date with what's going on and try to get a grip on how it's evolving?
I think the most accessible and the best format is Breakpoint or Accelerate, which happened in May. So the conferences are just a really good format because everything is polished and prepared for absorption and consumption.
That's
and
just the,
and
the talks that people are doing and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, watching those
and the
back.
workshops,
And the
talks,
workshops. Okay.
and surrounding that, like I mentioned earlier, we have a validator summit called Block Zero, which is way more technical as well, and then dives
Mhm.
into more of these things. But otherwise, kind of just like lurking on Discord. Like
Yeah,
that's
okay.
really it. You get so much alpha just like reading the core engineering channels.
Nice. I like that. How does do you handle much of Sol Strategies investing, Michael? I imagine you have got a number of different people on the team doing all sorts of different things.
So we have an investment committee. As a public company, we have a board of directors, which I joined on Monday. The board is majority independent, meaning the directors on the board, most of them are not involved in the direct management of the company and are not major shareholders, which is very important for governance and is one of the requirements for the NASDAQ. And the board has committees. So we have an investment committee, and they make the kind of overarching investment decisions or define mandates for parameters within which we invest. But our investment is primarily focused, obviously, on Sol.
I've seen passed around the name, the MicroStrategy of Solana. But yeah, that's one arm of the company, the business. I think second one is validator. I guess you are running two different. Or two or four.
Four.
3, 4. And then we're tokenizing HODL, the ticker soon,
Stake,
fully available.
So the ticker on NASDAQ and
Yes.
the tokenized ticker will be Stake, STKE.
HODL is the Canadian Securities Exchange.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, BlackRock already has that in the US. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to the point of kind of MicroStrategy of Solana, it's a comparison that people like to make. And, I think, there's probably a space for something like that. But for us, we really want to focus on building a broader business around the infrastructure and the tech. Like right now, half of our revenue approximately, and don't quote me to that, and our CFO will shoot me for saying it because it's not audited financials and all these things, but about half of our revenue, and we have a Dune dashboard where you can track it in real time, is coming from operating validators. So we are constantly earning more SOL from active operations, not just from passive holding of SOL.
Do you get much or earn much from your investing arm? I guess it's a bit too early to say at this stage. You're only just over a year old, and these things tend to take a lot more time than 1 year. But I guess the better question is, how are you seeing investing evolving in the Solana ecosystem at the moment and up until the end of the year and potentially beyond, given all of this MicroStrategy stuff and how that's all developing?
Our focus from an investment standpoint is on accumulating SOL.
Okay.
So not necessarily investing in other projects. It's something we're always evaluating and open to, but the core thesis is accumulate more SOL and earn more SOL through operations.
Does that mean you guys have never really considered branching out to anywhere other than Solana, doing validator work for other projects, or even just investing outside of the Solana ecosystem?
Yeah, that's correct. We're focused completely on Solana.
Is there any particular reason for that? You don't want to stretch yourselves too thin, or you're just so bullish on Solana that you don't think there's much point elsewhere, or a different reason entirely?
We're just so bullish on Solana. It's, as I mentioned earlier, our thesis is one high performance blockchain is going to win, and that blockchain is going to be Solana.
How do you feel about things like Hyperliquid then coming in and doing an application first rather than a chain first, and sort of inverting the strategy, so to speak? Do you think that that's going to change how the chain application relationship plays out in future?
It's an interesting question. I think Hyperliquid has a lot of market share because they offer a very compelling product.
Mhm.
But Solana ultimately is an all-purpose blockchain. So Hyperliquid is competing with Radium or Pump.fun, Vector, with these platforms. They're not competing with Solana, the L1. And we see, the majority of user attention and hype is on kind of the perps trading and meme coin platforms. But long term, I think the majority of the value is going to be on the infrastructure layer, the payments layer, the real world asset layer.
I think that's a really good point, because everybody was kind of crying, saying, "Oh, no, I mean crying. Oh, Solana has lost the plot, whatever. Hyperliquid now is the place to trade." Well, sure, perps and a great DEX is kind of the strongest PMF for now for crypto. I mean, a crypto use case, but there's so much more that an Hyperliquid isn't going to do, and where Solana is, as of today, already the best position to help out, and you see institution come in and actually using Solana. So that's actually a really good point, I think, you make.
And are you ultimately comfortable keeping your life savings on a chain that is controlled by like 2 people? I'm not.
I have much in a traditional bank, so maybe.
That's very true. That's very true. Michael, how do you see the rest of the year playing out for us at the moment? Like, given the market conditions and everything over the past, let's say, month, 3 to 4 weeks, has been looking very nice. How are you feeling about things at the moment?
I think it's hard not to feel positive at the moment, but that's the million SOL question, right? We started the year at 200 SOL, and now we're back there. So if we zoom out, I'm not sure that we've made much progress. Obviously, Bitcoin is up 20% from 100K, which is great. And I think that I hope that SOL has room to grow and go up from here. Long term, absolutely. I think we're going to see significant growth in SOL. But I generally try to avoid short-term speculation because it's so impossible to predict, especially with the kind of political and regulatory environment where anything is possible.
Fair enough. I'm curious to know then what you think about Pump Fun and whether or not them sort of pivoting to move off Solana and launch their own chain eventually and do their own thing, whether or not you've found them to be a good or a bad thing for Solana potentially, or how you feel about them more generally.
I think
sorry, I think that they played a huge part in Solana's run up over the past 12 to 18 months. And I think their launch and subsequent pivot away, or soft pivot away, I guess you would call it, is pretty significant for the ecosystem as a whole. But I don't see many people talking about it in broad spectrum terms.
So I think it's kind of popular to hate on Pump Fun, and I've personally never been like deep into that space on the ecosystem. I haven't really dealt much with that area. I kind of stick to SOL and USDC. Those are my 2 tokens. But I think broadly, I would say they were good for the ecosystem, or they are good for the ecosystem, because in the early months of the year, they proved that Solana can handle a ton of volume, a ton of attention, a ton of transactions. It can generate significant amounts of value transfer. Whether that value transfer was good or bad is a different question, but Solana as a network, as an infrastructure layer, was able to process that value transfer, which is really important. And recently, they proved that capital markets work on chain. 12 minutes to raise $600 million or something, and that's ties into what I was saying earlier. When we have issuers doing IPOs on chain, issuing stocks on chain, that sort of capital formation is what they want to access, right?
Yep.
If you go to do a traditional IPO, Circle IPO'd on the NASDAQ at $30 and now they're trading at 200. So, did the bankers advise them incorrectly on what price to set, or how did that work? How many fees were collected by intermediaries? So I think Pump Fund has proven a lot of very important things for us and shown where the ecosystem can go. At the same time, I've been here since 2021. Solana, shortly after I launched my validator, reached $240, $250. And I was in Amsterdam, I was in Lisbon at Breakpoint when FTX collapsed, and we reached $8. And then we went back up to 270 and then back down to 130. So this roller coaster never stops. And there have been along the journey multiple kind of Pump Fund level hype projects that have come and they've had their day and they've contributed and provided value. And I'm not saying that Pump Fund's day is over, but I think, we have to look at it as the cycle continues. Solana will still be here in a year, in 5 years, or in 10 years, and it will still be holding a significant value. And I'm not too worried in the short term if projects want to try and pivot away to capture more value.
Why do you think people would stay on Solana? Because this is a question that has been bothering me for a while. And if you're a Pump Fund, or if you have a Pump Fund equivalent application that has proven success on Solana, why would you not then go out and do exactly what Pump Fund have tried to do and what Hyperliquid have been successful in doing, in spinning out an application and creating your own chain to funnel all of the value back to that chain, rather than give it to something that could be conceived as like a third party, in which in Solana's case, this is what, or Ethereum's case, or any other one. Why would you not spin off your own chain and try to funnel all the activity into your own environment?
Well,
it's a difficult
the
question.
funneling,
I'm sorry.
No, not really. I think the funneling is the key there. The funneling is not so easy. So it's easy to say, okay, we're on Solana, we've got 100 million users. Now we're going to go to our own chain, and they're all those 100 million users will come with us. But in reality, I don't think that's the truth. People are on Solana to do more than one thing. They're not just trading on Pump Fund. Some maybe, but broadly, as I said, this is a general purpose blockchain. This is a place where you can ultimately one day have your retirement savings, maybe have ETFs, have USDC to pay for your coffee every day or your electricity bill at the end of the month. It's where you can speculate on something like Pump Fund. It's where you can stake. It's where you can liquid stake. It's where you can restake. So those projects, I think, will see a gradual kind of drain of users because the capital, the user base, is on the L1, is on Solana.
And we see now, if Pump Fund were ever to leave Solana, you have Raydium. Jupiter has its own launchpad and tokens where I can trade, which I think is pretty cool, as you have those first movers, which don't mean much anymore because, we learn a ton from Pump Fund. Raydium launches its own launch labs or whatever. I can't remember the exact name, where it stays on Solana. And I think, the full suite of product is going to mostly stay on Solana. And so far improvements and so on, and user experience has been amazing. So as you said, what if I can just do from my Phantom software app on my phone? It's pretty cool. I don't have to move anywhere.
Yeah, and have your whole financial life in one place. Why? Who wants to go and switch between 30 different chains? That's literally why we're building Solana.
Yeah, no, totally. I totally agree with that part of the equation. Being able to do everything everywhere in one place is the main concern for crypto at the moment. I've almost exhausted all my questions, Michael. Is there anything you wanted to ask us about Pyth in particular, or anything you wanted to plug about Sol Strategies coming up for the rest of the year, or anything you think it's worthy of mentioning?
I mean, I think, yeah, I'd love to kind of get your input on where you think RWAs are going. Recently, we launched the HODL price feed on Pith, so our stock price is available on chain. And obviously, you guys are thinking about RWAs. So where do you think the space is going to go, and do you think it'll gain significant traction?
I think eventually it will definitely gain significant traction. I think the future will inevitably be something like the Nasdaq trading 24/7 on chain, and Pith will no doubt play a huge part in being able to make that happen with things like price feeds and the like. I think that's a certainty in the future. The path to getting there is far less certain, but we're making good headway with things like getting X stocks into the market and being used and listing things such as HODL as soon as we can, and making those opportunities available to builders and to consumers on chain. Yeah, that's what I think it's going. I think it's inevitable, but the path forward is not exactly clear, but that's also what makes it exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to add to that, I mean, I've never, thought about owning any stocks yet. I wouldn't really know where to look for right now. But what's really cool, where we've gotten demands from apps and builders saying, "Hey guys, I'd like to, for now it's maybe just a perp market that we launch with Apple, Tesla, and so on. Testing demand, they've seen great demands and users coming to I guess gamble on this. And one app that now is all over my timeline is called Mass Money, which is a mobile app where actually you can buy. I mean, I'm not even. They use Dinari as a kind of system to do this, but you can own stocks, gold, silver directly on this app, and which is really cool and kind of opens the door to a bunch of use case where I don't have to think too much about how do I get access to this, and opening the door. I think there's a ton of stuff to that needs to happen to make it, I guess, more regulated, making sure, okay, I'm not gonna get rugged at some point. But yeah, I think the early builders that have caught this wave are doing some really cool stuff, and only makes me, I guess, motivating me to maybe buy, unless instead of just crypto tokens, buying a few RWAs myself.
Well, on that note, I think something that is potentially exciting and where we can look at the kind of cryptocurrency space as something that can be healthy and supportive is if we can create an ecosystem where we can get young people to begin investing and creating savings at an early age through the blockchain and build up, those kind of generational wealth level of savings or investments. That's something that I think, would be a great outcome of all of this.
This is how I got my financial literacy. Before that, in college, never learned about anything. I guess my parents had opened a bank account for me when I was 13, and savings accounts or whatever, but I not learned anything about it. So
Yeah.
DeFi was kind of how I said, "Oh, here's what I can do, what I should do." Lost a bunch, won some, whatever.
Mhm.
But it's, I mean, in the trenches a bit. But that's how I learned.
It's the same story for me, Pepito. Most of what I know about finance and economics is thanks to crypto, not thanks to my education or anything like that. It's just thanks to playing around and enjoying this crazy game that we all play.
Which is good. It should be fun, right? So, I think if this ecosystem can leverage that and take fun and accessibility and relatability and turn that into, financial education and health. That might sound a bit boring for the pump fun trenches, but ultimately I always look at everything we're doing like, okay, cool, it's fun, but how do we change humanity with this in the long run?
Chop, I think it's time for your. Oh,
I think we've lost him.
I was going to ask if it's
quick questions.
Sorry, Chop, you chopped out briefly.
Lagging really badly, obviously. Okay. 2 quick questions from the audience, and then I'll launch into my final question. So about IRL companies approaching stocks on Solana to find investors and bring yield on Solana. I think we kind of covered that already with trying to get the average person into stocks and to get interested in investing in stocks from all around the world where it's not previously possible. But do you have anything to add to that, Michael?
Well, it's twofold. So the one is that people from around the world can invest in stocks, but it means that companies can also access investors from around the world, which, that a lot of companies might want that. And we would love that. I think that's a really interesting piece where with a global economy, stock ownership is still very country dependent.
Yep, makes sense. And then our final question here from Derp about worrying about the interim stage of RWA custodians.
Yeah, I think it depends on which RWA you speak about. So, and how the custodians are set up. So even if you hold a stock in Robinhood, there is behind the scenes a different company that is actually the custodian of the stock. When we talk about tokenizing our stock with Superstate, there is actually no custodian in between. Your wallet is the custodian. That's it. Your KYC is what protects you. If you get rugged, you can go to a Superstate and say, here's my identity. This is my wallet. This is what happened. And they will assess the situation. And maybe they can reinstate your stock if they agree with what happened. But there's no third-party custodian. But yes, with some of the systems like Xstocks, they are, I think, a Jersey or in one of these Isle of Man or somewhere companies that issue the stock, and they have a third-party custodian that holds the kind of the backing stock. So it's something to think about. Yeah.
Cool. Great answer. Thank you, Michael. As Pepito was alluding to, I have a stream up, which is if you were entering the space now as a
Is he gonna make it?
what would that one piece of advice be? Is that working? I can't tell if I'm dropping in and out or not.
I only missed one word. If I was entering the space as a what would my advice be?
As to yourself be.
So I didn't catch it.
No.
So I'll ask for Chop. I'll take the mic. But no, his usual question is, if you were to enter the space today to contribute, start working in Web3 crypto, what would be now the advice you give yourself starting out?
Okay. I think, getting really good at Rust. I still am not really able to write a Solana smart contract. It's my biggest regret. I think that's an area of extremely high value, high demand. Building front ends as well, but I think if you master Rust, you'd be able to pick up the front end from an engineering perspective, right? So I think that's something where there's incredibly high value and you can contribute a lot, and a lot of people are looking for that kind of skill.
I think that answered the question. Michael, I don't think we have any other question. Thank you so much for coming on. It was super insightful, learned a ton, and super excited to see what you guys are cooking the rest of the year, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Michael, have a good day, and
thanks, Michael.
Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Well, it appears every end of streams, Chop is like, oh, no, we've passed the 55-minute mark, and he's like, no, we do not go over an hour, so it's time to shut him up.
Just dipping out. Gonna get straight out.
No,
hopefully.
Yeah, still cutting out.
Please still hear me.
Still
We'll shot.
a little bit.
Still cutting out.
You get You get rugged. Pythians, thank you a ton for coming on. We'll see you next week for another one. I don't think I have any alpha on to share for the next invite guest, but should be a good one, as I hope you always think that. Chop. Oh yeah, he's frozen. Thank you all, and see you in the trenches on the timeline and in the Pit Discord.